President Trump's sweeping global tariffs for more than 90 countries have come into effect.
We have a lot to do in this country. We have a lot positive to do in this country, building one Canadian economy.
National debt has reached a record $37 trillion.
7 of America's most vital trade partners, the nations that deliver the metals in fighter jets, the medicines in our hospitals, and even the coffee beans that start your day, are slowly but surely turning away. Instead of unloading billion-dollar shipments in Los Angeles, Seattle, or New York, cargo ships now dock in Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal. What's happening isn't just a numbers game. It's about influence. Every trade pact signed in Ottawa rewires the economic engine of North America. And every tariff signed in Washington drives suppliers further away from American shores. The fallout is clear. Higher prices for U.S. households, shortages in American stores, and Canadian companies winning a decisive advantage in the global marketplace. This is no longer just a trade dispute. It's a fundamental reset of the continent's future. The bigger question: has America already surrendered its supply chain crown to Canada? In 2024, the United States doubled down on tariffs. President Donald Trump authorized sweeping penalties of 25% to 50% across industries ranging from rare earth minerals to textiles, pharmaceuticals, and coffee. But beneath the political slogans came economic shockwaves. Data from the World Trade Organization shows the U.S. now enforces tariffs covering more than $260 billion worth of imports. That includes life-saving drugs, critical microchips for electric vehicles and smartphones, and raw materials that feed American manufacturing. The backlash was swift. Nations that once viewed the U.S. as their most dependable customer quickly turned to new markets, and they found one just across the northern border. While Washington hardened its stance, Ottawa did the opposite. Prime Minister Mark Carney's government signed more than $10 billion in trade agreements with suppliers from Asia, Africa, and Europe. These deals weren't symbolic. They offered predictability, multi-year guarantees, and tariff-free access to Canadian markets. China, which controls over 60% of rare earth production and 85% of global processing, signed a $1.2 billion deal with Canada. India, the world's largest pharmaceutical producer, inked a $1.8 billion agreement on medicines and textiles. Brazil, which supplies more than one-third of America's coffee, rerouted exports to Canada through a $1.5 billion agricultural pact. The outcome: U.S. buyers now face shortages and inflated costs, while Canadian firms gain stable supply lines, cheaper inputs, and something even more valuable: global trust. The turning point came in late 2024 when Donald Trump returned to the White House and unleashed his America First tariffs targeting suppliers from China, India, Brazil, Thailand, South Africa, Malaysia, and Switzerland. Collectively, these countries represent hundreds of billions in exports to the U.S. Suddenly, the math didn't add up. Rare earths are a perfect example. These 17 minerals underpin everything from electric vehicle batteries to missile guidance systems. Washington's 25% to 30% tariffs created costly delays and new licensing hurdles. Instead of scaling back, Beijing redirected supply to Canada, investing in processing plants in British Columbia, and signing multi-decade contracts guaranteeing Canadian manufacturers priority access. For U.S. tech firms and defense contractors, this meant being shut out of essential supply chains. For Canadian industries, it meant a once-in-a-generation edge in clean energy, consumer electronics, and defense technology. The political responses showed the contrast. In Washington, Trump praised tariffs as victories, arguing they revived U.S. factories and defended American jobs. Supporters cheered, but economists painted another picture. The Peterson Institute for International Economics estimated tariffs would cost American families an extra $1,500 per year. The IMF warned of a 0.5% drag on U.S. GDP growth annually. Ottawa, meanwhile, projected confidence. Carney's government framed the trade deals as long-term wins, and even opposition parties rallied behind them. Global reaction followed. China called its partnership with Canada a model of stability. India praised Ottawa for offering predictability America no longer delivers. One European analyst summed it up. While America fights, Canada builds. The industry impacts are everywhere. Malaysia diverted $900 million in semiconductors to Canada, delaying Silicon Valley product launches while Canadian startups thrived on reliable chip supplies. South Africa's $800 million mining deal shifted car parts away from Detroit and into Ontario, where auto plants are now hiring while U.S. factories cut jobs. Switzerland redirected $1.3 billion in advanced machinery exports to Canada, leaving American buyers paying nearly 40% more. The ripple effects, slower U.S. car rollouts, higher hospital equipment costs, and consumers squeezed at checkout. In Canada, the reverse is true. Lower prices, better access to goods, and rising employment. Statistics. Canada reports exports through Canadian ports jumped 12% in early 2025, while U.S. ports saw an 8% decline. As one Canadian official put it, "We're not planning for today. We're planning for the next 20 years." On the ground, Americans feel the pressure. Families in Detroit now drive across the border to Windsor for prescription drugs, which cost 40% less thanks to Indian suppliers prioritizing Canada. Iowa soybean farmers complain they're being undercut as Brazil supplies Canadian buyers at cheaper rates. One farmer told Reuters, "We're losing markets we built, while Canada takes everything." In contrast, Canadians see real benefits. Public approval of Carney's trade strategy is at record highs. New trade hubs are expanding at Toronto's Pearson Airport. Even opposition politicians describe the agreements as historic opportunities. Europe, too, is recalibrating. In June 2025, the European Union announced it would explore joint trade initiatives with Canada, with EU officials calling Ottawa their preferred partner in North America. The World Trade Organization echoed that sentiment in its July 2025 report, warning the U.S. risked isolating itself from supply chains it had once helped create. The report specifically highlighted Canada's emergence as a hub for pharmaceuticals, agriculture, and industrial goods. In short, when one country becomes unpredictable, suppliers look elsewhere, and increasingly, they're looking north. Looking forward, economists see three scenarios. The first, a reset. Washington reopens talks, lowers tariffs, and tries to rebuild lost supply chains. But much of the damage may already be permanent. Multi-decade contracts rarely unwind. The second, escalation. If tariffs climb further, American households could face an additional $2,500 in annual costs by 2027, while even more nations shift to Canada. The third, and most likely, is permanent realignment. By 2030, the IMF projects the U.S. could lose $50 to $70 billion annually in redirected imports, while Canada cements itself as the continent's stable hub. Which leads to the core question: has the center of gravity in North America already shifted north? And if so, can America live with being in Canada's shadow? Subscribe for more fact-based reporting. And don't forget to like the video